All right.
Along those
Hey,
lines,
we're on the air with Spreaker audience, just to bring you in a little bit of pre-show, and we will be coming onto the live show shortly, so stick around. I'm going to go embed the audio while you fill up the next 90 seconds.
Okay, 90 seconds. That's always too short. I can hardly say a complete sentence in 90 seconds.
Short.
Well,
Hardly.
so you brought in some good stuff here to talk about today.
Well, I brought in the 2015 Liberty rating from the New Hampshire Liberty Alliance, which we just released a couple of years ago. A couple of years ago. Well, we did that too a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
A couple of weeks ago we released it, and it's available on the website as well, nhliberty.org on the
Cool,
on
the
left-hand
latest
side.
stick we get to whack people with.
That's right. That's really
wanna,
what it's good for.
We definitely want to talk about that, and then we're going to download it, and we're going to post it, and we're going to give kudos to the right people and.
We got to get Rick to do the Rhino of the Week again.
You know, he's been really busy with his new range and all that stuff.
Oh, I know it.
Well, with the new range, absolutely. 400 yards. Ooh, how nice is that?
Yeah.
Sweet.
Yep.
I don't think I have anything. I think I probably need something new for a 400-yard range.
Shaolin Rifle Works.
Did you see the review?
But it got pulled.
By whom?
I was reading it last night on The Truth About Guns, where it was.
I
then all of a sudden
cross-linked it this morning.
Oh, okay, good. I'm glad to see it, because I was reading it, and then I refreshed the site just to see if anything else was new, and I didn't see the post.
Yeah, I've got it.
Oh, it was a nice post.
It may indeed be the most accurate AR-15 in the world.
All right, on that note, we got to go.
Cool,
We'll be right back. Stay tuned.
Feel the power.
Oh, I can feel it.
Our moment of triumph approaches. It's
GrokTALK.
This is a coalition of New Hampshire taxpayers. We're located at 8 North Main in Concord, New Hampshire. This is a repository for all things conservative and municipal. So if you have a problem in your town, your school, your budget committee, the right to know law, and now, at the top of our list is voter fraud. You have a tip for us, some information for us, you want to join or help us out, cnht.org.
Flashback.
We will have to talk to the proprietor of the office space and go, which hole do we use?
Yeah, I hate it when you have to say that.
We should go back, I think, so talking of college, to the scheme whereby not only do the parents help their kids, but there are no government subsidies, and let the colleges compete for the best kids by offering scholarships to those that are the best kids.
That's crazy talk.
There's Steve, always with the smart remark.
That'd work, too. That's why they won't do it. It'll work. You know, at their core. I mean, society can scope.
Right, so about 3 squirrels ago.
GraniteGrok.com is a product of GraniteGrok.com. GrokTALK is a product of GraniteGrok.com.
I just love this idea of how they're going to go to a bourbon festival or several bourbon festivals in Kentucky, because that's where the young people go. So first we'll get them drunk, and then we'll hook them onto Obamacare. What a country!
As the old Russian poet Pushkin said, where there is a trough, there will be pigs.
I tell you what, you guys have a great sense of humor. I mean, no matter how much ribbon I do, even that airbrush Marine you have there, no matter how much ribbon I give you guys always come back for more, and you're always polite. And, you know, I go to the liberal websites where I have a lot of fun haranguing them, and they really get their panties in a wad. And I'm always getting kicked off, and I have to make a new name, and it's brutal.
Yeah,
and they're wrong.
Yeah, it's almost like saying their crap don't stink.
I was about to say the same thing. Their poop don't stink, but you know.
That's it, ladies and gentlemen. Here on GrokTALK, we have crap, we have poop, we have monster trucks. Okay. We have come pretty close to the end of this segment.
Good.
Things are deteriorating.
GrokTALK.
GrokTALK comes to you live almost every Saturday morning from 9 to 11 a.m. Eastern Time on New Hampshire's leading conservative blog site, GraniteGrok.com. You can also listen live at Spreaker.com. If you missed a live show, catch up with the podcast at GraniteGrok.com, Spreaker.com, on Stitcher Radio, at iTunes, TuneIn, or iHeartRadio, and now on The Rock, New Hampshire's Christian radio station, The Rock, NHCR.com. GrokTALK is a mobile-ready broadcast, so you can listen anywhere, anytime, on your PC, laptop, tablet, or smartphone.
GrokTALK.
Hi, this is Rich Gerard, host of Gerard at Large in the Morning, the Manchester area's only locally owned, locally operated, focused, and interested, riveting radio show, heard live every Monday through Friday from 6 to 9 on 90.7 FM WLMW, New Hampshire Family Radio, and available 24/7 live or archived at GerardAtLarge.com. Be sure to tune in.
The 603 Alliance held its second training seminar on Tuesday, August 11, 2015 at St. Anselm's Institute of Politics, and despite the heavy storms throughout the area, the turnout was fantastic. After introductions and a brief overview of who the 603 Alliance and CVL New Hampshire LLC are, the training focused on the first in the state 603 Grassroots Presidential Caucus to be held on Saturday, October 17, 2015 at the Hopkinton Fairgrounds. Procedures for the caucus were discussed, and a call to action for volunteers to help on event day was met with great enthusiasm. Almost everyone volunteered to help, and thanks to our wonderful friends from Massachusetts who have offered their assistance as caucus marshals. If you could not make the training seminar this week but would like to volunteer your time, please download the GPS Caucus sign-up form available at 603alliance.org. There are instructions on the site for where to send the form.
3, 2, 1.
We'd like to welcome you to another edition of GrokTALK, brought to you by New Hampshire's leading conservative blog site, GraniteGrok.com. We are your feared, extremist, right-wing, hard-charging, gun-toting, opinionated, outspoken, rabble-rousing, letter-writing, radio, microphone-stomping conservatives and rational libertarians. So get ready for more news and opinion you could only get from GraniteGrok.com.
GrokTALk.
I have in my formerly nicotine-stained fingers the latest Liberty rating, and we're going to talk about that with Paul Best, who's joined us to let you know who will be on the program today. Before we start with Paul, Darlene Pawlik from Right to Life, John Burt from the New Hampshire House. We're going to talk about ballot selfies. Yay! Haggy Masson couldn't make it today. We'll get into that perhaps a little later. And John Judis from National Journal will be joining us. But we're not going to waste any time talking about that stuff. You can check us out on Facebook and Twitter, iTunes, TuneIn, Spreaker, Stitcher, iHeart, YouTube, and Ustream. But we want to talk to Paul. Welcome to the show, sir.
Thank you. It's good to be here.
Alrighty. Well, liberty's a great subject. We love the idea. We love the concept. In practice, it's a lot harder because you have these nasty things called politicians and governments that get in your way. But to aid and abet the advance of liberty, we have the New Hampshire Liberty Alliance and this wonderful document known as the Liberty Alliance Liberty Rating. And this has been coming out for years, and we like to reference it. And I'd like to thank you for bringing it.
Hey, that actually helps you.
It makes me look a lot better. I got to be honest with you. You can leave it there the whole show. I have no problem with that.
No, that's not happening.
All right, so let's talk very briefly for people who don't know about the process of creating this wonderful thing. It's been going on for years, and then we'll talk about the people in it.
Yeah, so it begins actually with looking at 800 to 1,000 bills that these legislators create every year. And, of course, we have I think it's a good thing. We have a lot of state reps in New Hampshire, 400 of them, so they're really average people. But one of the I don't know if it's a drawback to that is that they can create as many bills as they want. So we end up with a lot of bills every year. And we look through those bills. We have volunteers who look through those bills and identify the ones that are really important from a liberty perspective. Then we focus on those bills for going and testifying in Concord, and also for creating the gold standard, which is our weekly list of voting recommendations, which we're handing out. This year, we've always handed it out in the House. This year, we added the Senate as well. And then those are the basis for the liberty ratings. So we look at the roll calls. The roll call vote is where the legislators will there's a record of the votes for the legislators. There's also voice votes. Sometimes they'll vote, and we don't really have a record of where they stand on the issue. But when there's a roll call, we have a record of how each legislator voted. And when there's a roll call on a bill that was on the gold standard, then that's a bill that we use for the Liberty rating. So this year we have 50 bills that we've used for the Liberty rating, and right on the document it lists what those bills are. That's on page 2. And then, of course, we did the same thing in the Senate. In the Senate, there's, I believe, 24 bills thereabouts, and that's on page 11.
And then on page II, the dereliction of duty, folks. And immediately I saw that 2 of my reps from Belknap County made the list, David Russell and Don Flanders. Yee-haw. David Russell missed 90% of the votes, and Don Flanders missed 78% of the votes. And, I've been urged to run for rep over and over and over again, and I work. I'm the sole breadwinner in my family, and I have to work. Some people have said, well, just deny a Democrat a seat and just run anyways. And it's like, I can't do that. Apparently because I'd never be able to vote, and apparently these 2 nitwits have no problem doing just that. Oh, I'm a state rep. Yeah, state rep in name only.
Yeah, I mean I guess that's the other side of it. I suppose if somebody's holding his seat, that if somebody's going to show up and vote the wrong way, that would be even worse. But yeah, these are representatives who have missed at least 70% of the votes that we scored. So,
are there mitigating circumstances?
I was going to say, because isn't Susan DeLemus with her wounded husband?
Her husband was.
Yeah, and there can be mitigating circumstances. We actually discussed that, whether to take that into account, or to what degree to take that into account. The thought is that if you can't make the votes, then you really should resign. That's been the historical position of the NHLA.
I wouldn't
and so we decided, once we get into that and we start saying, well, this person has a good reason. Well, what about this reason that's almost as good? Well,
yeah, then you become an organization with a phone and a pen, and we don't want to go there.
Yeah. I mean, usually she has been a good vote for Liberty in the past, but yeah, I looked at that and went, holy crap, really? And then I remembered, her husband was severely injured falling off of a roof, and really has had a hard time.
Yeah.
But you do need a standard, and you do need a law to follow, and everybody needs to follow it, and that makes perfect sense.
But an asterisk and a footnote doesn't void your standards, which I agree. Standards are standards. You can't keep making just tons of exceptions.
Do you think there's any, this might in any way, because the Senate is renowned for voice votes. They don't like roll calls, and anybody who tries to make roll calls more frequently than they would like to agree with tends to discover that they get absolutely nothing accomplished because they get shut down by everybody else in the Senate who doesn't want to do roll calls.
It's a big problem. You're absolutely right. And that's one thing we really wish we could have, is more roll calls in the Senate. Because, so many pieces of important legislation that we really want to grade people on, we have no record of how people voted. And that's one thing I would really hope that senators who are sitting senators would consider, and any new senators that are elected, to really give people a record of how people, I think people deserve a record of how senators are voting on issues.
I've never spent any time in the Senate, which is probably good. But I'm just wondering if there's a way that you could put people in that chamber who could take lots of notes,
Well, it's all
about voice votes.
Videoed,
yeah,
certainly.
That's true.
And
I know it's a lot of work.
There's generally at least one camera from who's those guys down in Nashua that I think is that are generally there filming. Not Bill, of course, but there's an outfit I think out of Nashua that is independent.
Granite State Progress is generally there, I would imagine.
They don't. Well, I don't know.
Not that
film,
they'd be friendly to us.
No, they're not. But there is a video and audio recording. Now, whether you can read lips or not, I don't know. But there is that. But who's got the time to?
The amount of time that's invested just to create this.
Self-flagellation.
Videoing is one thing, but man, figuring out
in the gold standard,
reading lips to figure that out on the bills would be challenging, but it would be great to really know on some of these key bills. I think somebody did that actually on that decriminalization bill. I saw there was a video of the voice vote. That was actually an interesting procedure to listen to, how that went. The original committee recommendation was ITL. and then the committee recommendation was overturned, and there was discussion and amendments, and I think some finagling as there is in the Senate, and people who opposed the bill managed to amend it so that it wasn't palatable to a majority of the senators, and then it went down. And somebody actually did make a video in that case of the voice vote. I believe it was to table it and kind of try to read people's lips and see how they voted.
Wouldn't it be fun, though, to take some of those videos and do voiceovers like they do with that great...
with the Hitler version?
Yes, and have them up there and just lay in the video and
let me tell you, I can't tell you how many times I wish I had the time to use PowerPoint to make videos, little cartoony videos of New Hampshire Democrats doing what they do, and making fun of the stuff they do. I picture Maggie running over, old people and stuff when she cuts the budget for nursing homes and things like that. That just takes hours and hours and hours.
I know.
I barely have enough hours for this. So, but yeah, that is a huge project. We're going to take a quick break. We're going to come back and continue the conversation. Stay tuned. This is GrokTALK. I am Steve McDonald here with Skip Murphy and our guest Paul Best, and of course Susan Olson at the end of the table. We'll be right back.
GrokTALK comes to you live almost every Saturday morning from 9 to 11 a.m. Eastern Time on New Hampshire's leading conservative blog site, GraniteGrok.com. You can also listen live at Spreaker.com. If you missed a live show, catch up with the podcast at GraniteGrok.com, Spreaker.com, on Stitcher Radio, at iTunes, TuneIn, or iHeartRadio, and now on The Rock, New Hampshire's Christian radio station, The Rock, NHCR.com. GrokTALK is a mobile-ready broadcast, so you can listen anywhere, anytime, on your PC, laptop, tablet, or smartphone.
GrokTALK.
Hi, this is Rich Gerard, host of Gerard at Large in the Morning, the Manchester area's only locally owned, locally operated, focused, and interested riveting radio show, heard live every Monday through Friday from 6 to 9 on 90.7 FM WLMW, New Hampshire Family Radio, and available 24/7 live or archived at GerardAtLarge.com. Be sure to tune in.
GrokTALK brought to you by the Coalition of New Hampshire Taxpayers and the bloggers at GraniteGrok.com. Check us out on Facebook and Twitter. Just look for GrokTALK. Granite Grok, sorry. Look for Granite Grok on Facebook and Twitter. We don't have a GrokTALK version yet. You can look for me, NH Steve McD. Skip uses the Granite Grok as his Twitter, so if you want to see what's going on in his mind, go over there. Plus, all our posts go to Twitter.
Yeah. So generally, the only time you get a piece of my mind on Twitter is during some kind of a debate that I'm watching on TV or some kind of rally type stuff. But generally, I'm not a Twitterer. I don't tweet out an awful lot. But when I do,
you do.
I do a
tweet
whole.
Storm.
Yeah, it's a tweet storm.
Okay.
Snark.
So back to Liberty. It's a great subject.
Well, and we were talking in the break about when you look at some of the legislators and the grades that they have earned, you're going, what? Really? The selection process for the bills, obviously there are criteria, and you can't look at all of them, and you have to have, I would think, not a narrow universe, but a pretty well identified universe that constitutes or does not constitute liberty. How's that input work?
Well, we're looking at the bills that are on the calendar each week in both the House and the Senate, and looking for the bills that have a liberty impact. They're clear from a liberty perspective, and we take stances on those bills in our gold standard sheet. And then any of those bills that are on the gold standard that receive a roll call vote, then those are used for the grading. If I look, I do also look through, and the other members of the board, especially our political director, Kevin Bloom, and our research director, Tim O'Flaherty, look through the additional bills that received, all the bills really that received roll call votes. And, I think we really have captured all of the bills that were clear from a liberty perspective that received a roll call vote. Now, the grades, I think, in the House are much more comprehensive, I would say, because in the Senate we have the issue that we talked about a minute ago with Steve, which is there really aren't nearly as many roll calls as we would like to see. So all we can do is grade the senators on the roll calls that we have. But in the House, we have many more bills that we can grade based on, and I think the grades in the House are actually very. I think they're very very good and very.
I think so
robust.
too, because it says right here that Stephen Shurtleff is a constitutional threat.
I've got a question.
Sure.
Looking here at Senate Bill 135 on page 2, relative to lead poisoning in children.
Yes.
Now, certainly everyone's opposed to lead poisoning in children.
Yes.
But just reading the title of that bill, how does that? What are the liberty implications, or do you recall?
Yeah. So that.
Because you're like, well, who would want to poison children? Well, but how is that a liberty issue?
Well, there were that bill was, of course, they like to create titles for bills. This is not as big of a problem in New Hampshire as it is in D.C., but politicians like to create titles for bills that make it sound,
Of course.
But what that bill actually did is it created a lot more restrictions for additional testing requirements for rental units and some other additional what we would consider property, the government getting farther involved in property to an extent that was really not necessary as far as what's really needed to protect people from lead poisoning. So, really arduous requirements that would have raised the costs of renting even higher than they are already.
But then Maggie can come out and say that Republican voted for a bill that, or opposed a bill that would have dealt with poisoning children, right?
Yes, and that they love to use that kind of rhetoric. But
you have to
when you
come out and
actually
defend
dig
it.
into the bill and you read what it's actually doing.
Oh my God! People don't read bills.
Exactly. The
have to
truth
make
is
that.
the truth is the current. There is not a necessity for farther, more arduous testing requirements.
It's like the
and
paint
restrictions.
disposal bill, the paint tax, and all of
The
that.
stewardship. It's stewardship. Use the right words.
We're gonna feed this new bureaucracy and create some cronies, some rent seekers, and then we're gonna tax people on an everyday product that we really have no problem with disposing of now, but because we want a bigger bureaucracy, this is how we're gonna go at it, and that's probably what this was. And
I mean, really, when you talk about the whole idea of liberty, it's a case of it is the elites who decide that we, ordinary people, can't do things right. And the only way that right is defined by them. That they that we cannot allow you to harm yourself is really what it comes down to.
Straight jacket.
Well, that's really what it comes down to.
Let my hand out so I can vote for a Democrat. Okay.
And for those people who say, well, we have to have government involved because we want a safe and secure environment, I mean, where is the line when it comes to freedom and liberty and responsibility for oneself? And it seems like a lot of these bills come out that say you aren't responsible for yourself. We have to have government responsible for you in all things. Is that kind of summarizing this?
Yeah, I think that's absolutely the case. And when we create or government creates these sort of one-size-fits-all regulatory structures, inevitably it ends up creating harm for people. People that weren't intended to be impacted perhaps by the legislation, or maybe they were, depending on the case. But, I think of licensing requirements, and New Hampshire is a great state politically in many ways, but we're not doing real well on licensing requirements. And that's an example where people in industry will get in and try to create lots of barriers to entry for people who want to enter a particular trade and try to protect themselves from competition. And we saw that with some bills. Actually, one of the bills I think it got a roll call and was on here on mold remediation services. And they're always every year trying to create several new licensing requirements, and it ends up hurting the consumer ultimately because the consumer has less choice. The real accountability in industry is based on reputation, not whether somebody filled out some paperwork and got paid a fee to get a license. So. There are a lot of examples where government is creating these rules to supposedly protect people, but it actually ends up restricting their ability to make their own choices and to flourish.
No, and I understand that because a while ago Seattle decided to raise its minimum wage to $15. I got a bunch of tab posts that already they're starting to see negative results of raising that minimum wage arbitrarily just because it would be a living wage, that while some people are getting more, there are a lot of people who are now losing their jobs because some businesses are closing because they can't afford it, or they're doing what most people will do in normally hard times. Now the government has made it an arbitrarily a hard time. They're laying people off, firing them, and the people who are left have to do much, much more. So who does it really help? And then those, in this case, who normally would need an entry-level job to be able to start on their way upwards, are denied those lower rungs because economically they're not worth hiring. Liberals hate that idea.
But my favorite was that there were people who got that raise who said, I only want to work part-time now because if I make too much money, I lose all my free benefits.
Yeah.
Well, I like I forget, somebody out in Washington, I think, that was just losing her mind because she says, I've worked at a fast food place for 8 years, and I still hadn't reached $15 an hour. Now,
I can know what's coming.
You just got to ask the question: really? You worked there for 8 years, and you haven't gotten a raise?
She hasn't gotten $15 an hour.
Apparently, she hasn't gotten $15. But I mean, it's all kind of nutty.
There's managers that don't make that much. But I worked there. I worked at McDonald's in high school. Started at $2.35 an hour. I went to college. When I came back, after I discovered that college really wasn't for me, I went into the management program. And within a short period of time, I was making really good money. The hours suck. The job has to deal with public a lot, which if you don't like that, but I did it for years. You can make really good money working there. And it doesn't take a lot. You can apply yourself to any position like that and be successful. If it took her 8 years, she might not have been in a situation where that was possible.
Who knows? But
it's really intended to be, these low wage jobs are intended to be a place for young people to get into the world of working and to get experience.
Yeah, like me.
And you need that first step in order to move up farther. It's not intended to be an ending point where you stop at $10 an hour and you have a spouse at home and you raise a family of 4 and you have a house with a car in the garage. It's not the stopping point. It's the starting point. And if you remove those starting rungs, I saw. I think it's been around a little while, but I really like, there's a political comic with a ladder, and it shows the first several rungs of the ladder broken off, cut off.
Oh, yeah, yep.
And the politician says to the young person, looking at the ladder, trying to climb it, congratulations, I've raised your minimum wage. And I think it's really true. When you have to have a starting point to move farther, and if you make it difficult for people to get a job at all, then they have no starting point and they can't advance. And I think that's also a problem a lot of times with welfare and in cases where it can be abused. But it's also cases where it's harmful to the people receiving the benefits, because in the short term it looks like a better. Why would you take a job at $9 an hour if you could get the equivalent of 10 or 11 or whatever it is in benefits? But you're stuck in that situation. Then it's like a trap, and you can't then progress past that. 10 years down the line, you're still getting the same amount of help, whereas if you had a job, you could then be getting experience and advancing. So it really does a disservice to people sometimes, I think, in those situations.
And you're absolutely right, because there is a crash point where, as you're trying to ramp up your own earnings, there is a very steep drop-off in those welfare benefits. That one extra dollar is the cliff instead of doing a slow slide. Now, I've always said that there needs to be a safety net, but being, my wife and I had a daycare center for 4 or 5 years, and we saw the people who decided it's easier because they were earning, $30,000, $40,000 equivalent of benefits. They said, "Why should I?" And they were just perfectly happy, and that was it. And those are the kinds of people that I wasn't too impressed with. We did have some single moms. In fact, I ran into one just the other day. I mean, she looked at it as a hand up.
I got to cut you off because we only have about 30 seconds left, and I want Paul to give his contact info for NHLA and himself.
The website is probably the best way to learn more. That's nhliberty.org, and you can see all of these Liberty ratings on the left-hand side, as well as our gold standard. And on the top right-hand side, you can join or donate. And we have a pack we donate to candidates. So we'd really, we have a cycle coming up soon, and help on that would be appreciated. All of the board's contact information is also on the About page on the website.
All right. Thank you, sir. Thanks for coming in. We hope to talk to you again soon. All right. Let me turn off a couple headsets here while oh, okay. Thanks. I can keep going. Excellent. This is GrokTALK. I'm Steve McDonald here with Skip Murphy, Susan Olson, Paul Best, and Darlene Pawlik. Our next guest is in studio, and we're going to come right back after a very short break to continue our conversation, this one on life, and some positive and affirming news instead of the stuff we're used to hearing.
This is the Coalition of New Hampshire Taxpayers. We're located at 8 North Main in Concord, New Hampshire. This is a repository for all things conservative and municipal. So if you have a problem in your town, your school, your budget committee, the right to know law, and now at the top of our list is voter fraud. You have a tip for us, some information for us, you want to join or help us out, cnht.org.
The 603 Alliance held its second training seminar on Tuesday, August 11, 2015 at St. Anselm's Institute of Politics, and despite the heavy storms throughout the area, the turnout was fantastic. After introductions and a brief overview of who the 603 Alliance and CVL New Hampshire LLC are, the training focused on the first in the state 603 Grassroots Presidential Caucus to be held on Saturday, October 17, 2015 at the Hopkinton Fairgrounds. Procedures for the caucus were discussed, and a call to action for volunteers to help on event day was met with great enthusiasm. Almost everyone volunteered to help, and thanks to our wonderful friends from Massachusetts who have offered their assistance as caucus marshals. If you could not make the training seminar this week and would like to volunteer your time, please download the GPS Caucus sign-up form available at 603alliance.org. There are instructions on the site for where to send the form.
GrokTALK.
3, 2, 1.
We'd like to welcome you to another edition of GrokTALK, brought to you by New Hampshire's leading conservative blog site, GraniteGrok.com. We are your feared extremist, right-wing, hard-charging, gun-toting, opinionated, outspoken, rabble-rousing, letter-writing, radio microphone stomping conservatives and rational libertarians. So get ready for more news and opinion you could only get from GraniteGrok.com.
GrokTALK.
Yeah, that's right. You can only get it from GraniteGrok.com. And you're going to get it, too. All right, welcome
he says
back.
That with such vigor.
He does.
Attitude.
Thanks to Paul Best, who's still with us, to continue the conversation. And, of course, Skip Murphy, Susan Olson, our stand-in guest host, who is welcome to stand in as a guest host as long as you want.
Thank you. But we do have to make room for Haggie next week.
We do have to make room for Haggie. She couldn't make it this week.
Haggie Madison, she's got a Common Core gig that took her out of town.
She's off pimping Common Core, so we're going to continue without her. But I'd like to welcome our next guest, who's a recurring guest. We haven't had her on in a while, but we're happy to have here Darlene Pawlik. Thank you so much for coming in.
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
Oh, great. So, obviously, the news in the world of life has been interesting and dire in certain circumstances with all these videos coming out. And, of course, the news yesterday, STEM Express has cut its Planned Parenthood connection. Aborted was the word I used this morning.
Ooh.
Aborted that relationship.
No.
And so that's been dominating the news in the world of life. But you had an article that you posted, and it's about some of the positive things, and we kind of wanted to talk about that.
Excellent. The videos have prompted a lot of phone calls and a lot of tears and a lot of women that have, and men too, who have really, even those that have been healed, come to see and hear all of this stuff again, and it's really brought up a lot of other feelings and the very difficult emotions from the traumatic pregnancy loss that they experienced, whether that was by abortion or whether it was stillbirth. It's very traumatic, and so I just wanted to take a look at the positive things that are going on, and we do have a lot of events coming up in New Hampshire. We have in September. We have Pillars of Personhood training that's going to happen, and that is, it's a 4-panel display that's 5 feet tall by 9 feet long on 4 corners. So it's really big, and we take that to colleges. And Josh Edmonds is the Georgia director for Pillars of Personhood. He's going to come up and do our training so that we can bring that out to the area around. And it has, the first panel is all human growth and development. The second panel is what happens when we deny personhood. So we're showing the victims. We don't have anything from the time of like Pol Pot or Kosovo or any of those. It's just 3 major ones. So we have slavery, the Holocaust, and we have, of course, the modern atrocities of a couple of victims from abortion. And then on the next panel, there are the elitist views, like who is deserving of personhood. So what are the exceptions that might be made?
Suitable persons.
Absolutely.
Suitable persons, right. Yes. I get it. I signed it.
Thank you. This is such a bright crowd. God, I love this place.
I am one of those gun toters. The 4th panel is emerging technologies. And on there is depicted, for example, cowboys, where they've mingled the DNA from cows and children. And those emerging technologies and the ultra-humans that are being created in laboratories around the world. And so what we do at Pillars of Personhood is we walk around the panels with college students and we talk about what it means to be a person and what happens when personhood is denied, and sort of just get the whole concept of why we should have the right to personhood according to the 14th
Planned
Amendment.
personhood.
Mm-hmm.
Sort of.
Bad pun.
Yeah.
Bad pun.
Did you have a question?
No, I'm fascinated. I didn't know this was taking place. I didn't know there was this sort of level of involvement with young people. I think that's incredible. I came out of that first wave in the 60s and 70s of these raging feminists who all of a sudden found out that there was such a thing as a birth control pill. And you could go off to college and literally screw around, and your parents didn't know anything about it, and nobody would say anything. It didn't cost any money, and how cool is this? And it was sold as a form of truly a rebellion and freedom, and you walk around with these signs and free love and free Poland and free checking, and I don't know, it was tough times, weird times.
Yeah, the problem is that there ain't no such thing as a free lunch, and certainly I think the generations today are paying the toll for that. No,
exactly.
But I have a question for you.
Yes,
when you talk about going to young people, you immediately think of colleges and universities, and we know what kind of a hotbed that is for every kind of just weird stuff arising from our generation.
Absolutely.
I have to
it's
say,
our
the
fault.
boomers,
No
it is our fault. And, if you, oh gosh, what's his name? Oh, it'll come to me. He's a university professor at UNC who writes an awful lot on Town Hall, Mike Adams. And he talks about some of the stuff that happens when people who are trying to be pro-life, and they set their signs up and their displays up on campuses. And as you put it, the raging feminists come along just totally outraged at this they're macroaggressions now how dare you show these kinds of pictures and have that kind of a message.
Make me think about it. It's such a buzzkill.
You are being oppressive, and you kind of go, what? Is part of this training going to cover that? How do you answer these kinds of people, and what do you do when they start trashing not just you, but as we saw out at University of California, where one of these raging feminists actually attacked some teenagers that were just quietly carrying the signs. They weren't even saying anything, but she took the signs and then beat them with it when they tried to get the signs back.
She was a professor, I think.
She was a full professor.
Yeah.
Right, and I forget the names because I'm horrible at names. But
they all look alike. You can see a picture of them. They all look alike. Sorry.
There's a phrase going through my head.
Sorry.
Yeah.
I didn't mean to get off track. But the idea that teaching young people is huge, and I think you're asking about at what age is this appropriate to start?
Well, I was thinking more of the self-defense. When you get attacked on campus, will this training have that? Because you are going into the belly of the beast.
Right. Yes, actually, one of the things that I have found, because I did what Created Equal used to call the Genocide Awareness Project. We did that at UNH. We did a mini gap. And so it was all pictures of developmental stages and victims of abortion. And there was some opposition. It was significant. We weren't physically attacked at that time, but things have escalated since then. That was 2007. And so I will have security on in the presence.
I volunteer.
Wonderful, thank you. That'd be awesome. Our first training is going to be right here in Concord, and right now we don't actually have an outreach event. So the Monday of the 21st of September, if you're in college and you want this to come to your school, please let me know, and I will make arrangements to make that happen. I could also do it at high schools if we had permission, but that's a lot more logistics issues with the permission ways, so it probably wouldn't happen right now. But if you're in high school and you want this to come to your school, you can let us know, and we'll go through we'll jump through the hoops to get it to your school. If that takes a couple years, that's fine with us.
I like that long-term thinking, couple years.
Oh, absolutely, yes. So this is not something that we're going to do once. This is something that New Hampshire Right to Life Educational Trust has purchased. The display, Josh is going to come up and teach a team of our people how to do it, so we will be bringing it around the state and maybe even in other places in New England. It is a long-term project, and it's not something that's going to go away quickly. The next thing that happens on the very next day is the Bringing America Back to Life convention. And this is going to be held in Nashua at the Crown Plaza. We have speakers from around the nation that are going to come and speak all day Friday and half day Saturday. And then Saturday afternoon, we're going to have presidential candidates come for a meet and greet. So it's going to be kind of a big deal. The speakers we have is, we were talking about Planned Parenthood earlier. Abby Johnson's going to come on Friday night, and she's our special guest, and she'll do the gala dinner for us. And so we'll be thrilled to hear from Abby and all the stuff that she's been doing now that this is all being turned up again. Abby's a very busy lady. She's was a clinic director for Planned Parenthood, and she's since turned pro-life 5 or 6 years ago. I'm not sure about the dates, so please apologize for that. But she has written a book, and she's gone around and speaking, and she's very pro-life now, actually adopted at least one child and maybe more. I don't remember, to be honest. I know so many pro-life people who adopt children. They're always saying you only care about them when they're in utero and you don't care about them after, which is completely wrong. We have Dennis Howard, who's going to come and talk to us about the economics of abortion and the silent echo is what I'm calling it. And that is that 56 million surgical abortions have depleted our intelligence, have depleted our productivity, have depleted our ingenuity by depleting the fact that we don't have those people here now. It's also depleted our social conscience and our ability to have as much empathy and care for one another because we just have this degraded sense of what being alive is really about. And so he's going to talk to us about that. Mike Griffin's going to give us a real good talk on personhood and what that really means in the social, economic, and political realms. And so that's going to be really great. And our local speakers are going to talk to us briefly. So because we have local speakers here, we're just going to give a few local speakers a few minutes, and then if local people want them to come back for something longer, they'll have the opportunity to do that. So more like sound bites. So I'm going to talk about the elitist view of exceptions in pro-life legislation. Ellen Kolb's going to talk about the impact of social media. Jane Cormier is going to talk about changing hearts and minds one at a time, or small groups, that sort of thing. And Kelly Roy is going to talk about human trafficking and its impact on pro-life legislation and what it means to encompass human dignity in all of its forms. We have a couple of other speakers that I don't have in front of me right now, but
do you have a date?
It is September 18th and 19th. And if you go to Bringing America Back to Life, newengland.org, Yes, it's very long. It's very long every time I type it. But if you go to my Facebook page or Bringing America Back to Life New England search, you should be able to find our Facebook page. There'll be links there so you can find us easily. The whole program is there. You can register online. You can donate, buy a table, please, please, please. If you are part of an organization and you want to have an exhibit table, you're more than welcome to do that also. Everything's right there online. It's very easy to do.
Okay, we're going to take a quick break, and we'll be right back with more of this. Stay tuned.
This is the Coalition of New Hampshire Taxpayers. We're located at 8 North Main in Concord, New Hampshire. This is a repository for all things conservative and municipal. So if you have a problem in your town, your school, your budget committee, the right to know law, and now, at the top of our list is voter fraud. You have a tip for us, some information for us, you want to join or help us out, cnht.org.
Hi, this is Rich Gerard, host of Gerard at Large in the Morning, the Manchester area's only locally owned, locally operated, focused, and interested riveting radio show, heard live every Monday through Friday from 6 to 9 on 90.7 FM WLMW New Hampshire Family Radio, and available 24/7 live or archived at GerardAtLarge.com. Be sure to tune in.
Hey, I wanted to remind you in a little conversation that we will set the Eye of Sauron on fire on the air if you give us $100. So
air?
On air. Well, it's no good off air.
In the building?
We'll work it out. We'll work it out.
Broadcast out, remote broadcast.
We'll do a remote from outside.
Yeah.
A little wireless.
Alcohol, gasoline or something.
A little lighter fluid or something on top. Just a tiny bit. Something. Just a little fire right there.
Just
$100. Come on.
Why not?
You're the one who says it's dying.
I don't mind the $100. I just have, my last name is Murphy. Murphy's Laws.
Can we get a
setting something on fire in a building?
Can we get a little H-boy wig for the Eye of Sauron?
We sure could. And I'm sorry you mentioned that, because prior to that I was going to say maybe we should just offer it up as
one eyelash.
We could do that too, but for target practice.
Oh yeah, it'd be pretty good for that.
At 200 yards.
At 200 yards.
Better yet, $100 you get a shot. Shoot it. How about that? We'll figure it out.
Yeah. Well, all right. Maybe.
Or you could just donate $100 to GrokTALK.com anyway, because we need the money. Anyway, let's get back to the conversation.
No, I think once the Londonderry Fishing Game gets their new range done, we could do it. $100, 200 yards. Go for it.
Run right through the eye.
I can get an extender cable for the USB, and we can
watch
the bullet. We can have the bullet coming in.
Oh, this is getting good. All right, brainstorming.
And wig on it, going.
And I can even make it shake its head.
Yes, you could.
Wow.
All right. So
welcome to the ADD blogger world of Granite Grove.
Back to positive life. After we talk about burning and destroying equipment.
Sorry, Darlene.
No apologies necessary. Great fun. Right after the convention, 40 Days for Life starts. So on the 21st of September, or the 22nd of September, there'll be a kickoff around the state, a couple different places. One in Manchester, I'm not sure where that is exactly, but that'll be on our website, and that'll be on 40daysforlife.com. The 22nd, there is the largest protest for Planned Parenthood ever put together.
September?
Spearheaded by Students for Life, September 22nd.
Okay. Oops, sorry.
There will be Planned Parenthood protests in 150 locations all over the United States. So 40 different organizations, I'm told, are participating in promoting this. And so it will be everywhere in all the Planned Parenthoods that we can muster all over the country. I'm sure it'll be bigger than that. That's just what we know about. That's just what Students for Life has been told. Yes, we're on board. Yes, we can do it. We have somebody to coordinate.
But that day, I think WMUR is at some knitting contest, and they won't be able to cover it.
That's
what I've heard.
Yeah, I did get that rumor.
Yeah, it's a memo. It's somewhere.
Yeah. 48. So 40 Days for Life, as some of you may know, is just a prayerful time outside of the abortion centers. And it's not a protest. The signs, if they carry any, usually say something to the effect of Jesus heals and forgives. There's help for you. We're here for you with, something very peaceful and prayerful, and seldom elicit any real true negative response, because it's not an in-your-face thing. It's a very peaceful time. You can sign up at 40 Days for Life. I think there's a 40 Days for Life New Hampshire, I think, is where we have our various programs. New Hampshire Right to Life usually sponsors 1 or 2 around the state, depends on whether or not they can get their own funding. And we just want to promote that too. And the next thing we have is really super key, and I'm so grateful to God for putting it on my heart to do. Last year I started this. In October of last year, our Vice President, Betty Bruder, brought to us the idea of having a post-abortion training for medical professionals. Her husband's a doctor, and so she feels like that the medical community really needs to be able to be versed in how to help women who are post-abortive. And so I contacted Teresa Burke, who founded Rachel's Vineyard, and I set a date, and she's coming up on November 7th. I went forward with that and took the spring to put forth an application to get continuing education units for medical professionals. So not only will we have this one full-day seminar for people who counsel women and men who have suffered traumatic pregnancy loss, but we will also have continuing education units for medical professionals available for those that want it. Wow. And it's a really big deal. It's taken like this whole year to bring it together and make it to come to fruition. We got her acceptance, so we actually do have those continuing education units available for medical professionals. You don't have to be a medical professional, though. You could be anyone. You're more than more than welcome to come and join us. That registration form and all of the specifics on the course, including all of the objectives, are right on nhrtl.org/RVM for Rachel's Vineyard Ministry. And so it's RVM. And that has everything you need right there, all encompassed. You can have the downloadable brochure, all of the objectives to the course, who to get in contact with, how to pay, everything. We even have an early bird special. And if you're already involved in the ministry of ministering to post-abortive families, you can give me a call. I have some special discounts available to you.
I noticed October 8th is the our New Hampshire Right to Life fundraising banquet.
Yes, it is. Thank you. I skipped that, didn't I? Thank you so much.
Manchester, correct?
It is. It's at the Best Western in Manchester. And Josh Edmonds, who does the Pillars of Personhood, will be there that evening, too. So if you have students or you are a student and you want to come, give us a call. We usually have sponsors for students. It is a giant family reunion for pro-lifers at the New Hampshire Right to Life banquet. We usually have a little more than 300 people attending. It is the people who have been in it since 1971 and the people who are coming into it now all in one place. It's so energized, and there's so much wisdom, and there's so much energy and ingenuity, and the whole thing comes together just marvelously. It's just a really wonderful family reunion for pro-lifers. They are some of the kindest, most generous people on the face of the earth, and they open their hearts and minds and wallets, and they really, really care about people. They don't just care about the babies in utero. They care about all people. And we really just have a wonderful time with each other.
They are. And I go to the CareNet fundraiser every year in Litchfield, down in Hollis. Right.
Cool. And the CareNet fundraiser usually are in that month, usually. And we also have those listed on our website as well. So if you sign up for our e-alerts and you're a CareNet supporter, you will find out when their CareNet things happen.
I just look at everything that you've listed off, and I dryly note what's going on in the wider world around us with the political activity that's just all around us because of those videos and the resurgence of the pro-life movement, where now for the first time more people are pro-life than they have been pro-abortion or pro-choice. Again, one of those bastardizations of the common language that the progressives like to do, because it takes the philosophy out from underneath us. What used to be good is now bad, and they've turned the tables, and it's very rarely noted that that's the only way that they can advance their message is by devolving the language. But you look at the states now that have decided to defund Planned Parenthood. We've done it here in New Hampshire twice. Once it was overridden by Jeanne Shaheen. New Hampshire Right to Life has got the FOIAs, Freedom of Information Act, or as we call them here in New Hampshire, Right to Know lawsuits going on.
91As.
Yep, 91As.
I hear us say that a lot.
I think there's now 5 states that are either in the process or have already defunded Planned Parenthood. So from your perspective, do you see this as just another set of regular waves, or is this more of a tsunami wave that all of a sudden it's sort of one of those times where, bing, everything is just happening at once?
I can only hope. That's what I have to say. We are in a time when information is everywhere and people know for sure. I think this is a dividing time. I think that's really what this is about, is really a dividing time. We're going to have people who are radically this or radically that. I think the middle of the road bunch is going to be very, very small.
Oh, there's no doubt about it, certainly in the political world. There is no mushy middle anymore. But
Wait a minute, isn't he going to run for governor?
And to which one are you thinking about? Never mind.
Maybe Huey, Chris Sununu.
Yeah. The phrase that Glenn Reynolds, who's a law professor down in Tennessee, who runs the large blog site Instapundit, calls it a perception cascade, where all of a sudden things build and build and build and build, and all of a sudden something small happens, and then everybody gets on board, and it just overwhelms everything else. And I am wondering, as I step back a couple of steps from this whole process, have we hit that tipping point? Has the crowd changed for pro-life? Understanding because of all the medical advances, first with the sonogram, then the X-rays, the ability to keep preemies, and I was a preemie at a long time ago now, but I was just that, and younger and younger, we're finding out more and more that the science isn't settled, and as we go along, and our people starting to say, well, we have to listen to this as well as to the heart. Not just the hard science, but to the emotional side of this. Because how many people walk around pregnant saying, oh, I like my fetus? It's always a baby.
Right. It's always a baby. It is always a baby, but that's where I'm talking about the dividing line, where you'll have the people who are actually pro-life, and I'm talking, I think Jane uses womb to tomb. So, I say conception to death. The issue that you're talking about, like, has this tipped to people becoming more pro-life? I hope so, but you have a lot of people who are really pushing this eugenicist mindset of, but there are exceptions. The elderly, the infirm, the really sick, that terribly disabled, they're going to cost money,
Well, that's kind of where Obamacare is coming from. Rahm Emanuel's brother Ezekiel said we shouldn't be giving out health care after age 75. Mm-hmm. I won't take any at age 75. I'm going to wait till he's 74, 364 days and see what he thinks about that.
Well, he's got money.
For the great...
He'll just pay cash.
Yeah, for the great, or for the goodness of society. I mean, you're right. The eugenicists are saying, we'll put boundaries on what life really means or what the quality of life really means.
If you reduce it to a budget line item, your bureaucrat has to make a decision, and you're going to be on the wrong end of it at some point. That's just the way it works.
But I'm not suggesting that this state or anybody has to take care of everybody's needs medically or anything like that. I'm just talking about not imposing death. That's the difference that I'm talking about here. I'm not talking about... we have to go all out and do all of these crazy things and put new arms and legs and all this other stuff on people that, some people would say are quote unquote not worthy. I'm not in a position to make that judgment, because I'm not an elitist. I leave that to people much smarter than me. All I'm talking about is if you're pro-life, basically to me it means you're not going to impose death on anybody.
Okay, quick contact information. We got about 30 seconds, and then we got to end the segment.
www.nhrtl.org. I have loads of information on www.thedarlingprincess.com. That's darling as in dear sweet one. princess.com.
All righty. Well, thank you so much for coming in.
Thank you.
And we'll talk to you again real soon.
It's been a real pleasure. Thank you all very much.
And you're always a great guest to have on.
Thank you.
All right. This is GrokTALK. My name is Steve McDonald. I'm here with Skip Murphy and Susan Olson, and Paul Best is still with us. Thank you again, Darlene. Coming up in our next segment, New Hampshire Rep. John Burt from the John Burt Society. Will be joining us to talk about ballot selfies, and we're going to talk about that and maybe whatever else we can squeeze into 27 and a half minutes or however long it is. We'll be right back.
This is a coalition of New Hampshire taxpayers. We're located at 8 North Main in Concord, New Hampshire. This is a repository for all things conservative and municipal. So if you have a problem in your town, your school, your budget committee, the right to know law, and now at the top of our list is voter fraud. You have a tip for us, some information for us, you want to join or help us out, cnht.org.
The 603 Alliance held its second training seminar on Tuesday, August 11, 2015 at St. Anselm's Institute of Politics, and despite the heavy storms throughout the area, the turnout was fantastic. After introductions and a brief overview of who the 603 Alliance and CVL New Hampshire LLC are, the training focused on the first in the state 603 Grassroots Presidential Caucus to be held on Saturday, October 17, 2015 at the Hopkinton Fairgrounds. Procedures for the caucus were discussed, and a call to action for volunteers to help on event day was met with great enthusiasm. Almost everyone volunteered to help, and thanks to our wonderful friends from Massachusetts who have offered their assistance as caucus marshals. If you could not make the training seminar this week but would like to volunteer your time, please download the GPS Caucus sign-up form available at 603alliance.org. There are instructions on the site for where to send the form.
Hi, this is Rich Gerard, host of Gerard at Large in the Morning, the Manchester area's only locally owned, locally operated, focused, and interested riveting radio show, heard live every Monday through Friday from 6 to 9 on 90.7 FM WLMW New Hampshire Family Radio, and available 24/7 live or archived at GerardAtLarge.com. Be sure to tune in.
GrokTALK.
3, 2, 1.
We'd like to welcome you to another edition of GrokTALK, brought to you by New Hampshire's leading conservative blog site, GraniteGrok.com. We are your feared, extremist, right-wing, hard-charging, gun-toting, opinionated, outspoken, rabble-rousing, letter-writing, radio, microphone-stomping conservatives and rational libertarians. So get ready for more news and opinion you could only get from GraniteGrok.com.
GrokTALK.
Hey there.
Hi.
How you doing?
I'm doing well.
Welcome to GrokTALK.
You too.
Brought to you by GraniteGrok.com, and thank you to the Coalition of New Hampshire Taxpayers. Visit cnht.org, make a donation, help them to interface with between taxpayers and municipalities. That's one of the things they do. And, of course, vote fraud is a big issue, and they're on top of that. So feel free to support them, and by all means support us to pay for all the wonderful equipment. And, once again, the offer is out there. We're going to maybe put some rounds through the Eye of Sauron in exchange for cash.
Yes,
So,
I have a Logitech replacement camera that I'm looking at getting. And I just have to play with it a little bit. I'd love to. If they're at a nice price, that I could actually put them around the room, so I could feverishly pick shots.
So it won't actually be a selfie, but it will be a picture of a video camera being destroyed by the bullet approaching it. So
Yeah, you'll see the bullet
Very
approaching
cool.
it.
It's not
I
gonna
just have
be-
to arm up the PC nearby.
Yeah. All right. Well, talking about taking pictures of things, we have on the phone with us from the John Burt Society, Mr. John Burt himself. Good morning, sir. John, you there? Oh, hang on. John, you there? There we go.
Oh, yes, I am.
Hey, sir. How you doing?
Hey, good. Thank you for having me on today.
Thanks for coming on the show. So we're going to talk about the ballot selfie law. That's made a lot of news lately.
Well, it has. Isn't that something?
It is something. It is something. I see little posts that say these people violated your constitutional rights and da-da-da. So first of all, tell us what the bill is, and then we'll get into the weeds.
Well, Representative Timothy Horrigan was the one that introduced the bill. I don't know if you gentlemen know him well.
We do.
We know him well, John, because he is a frequent commenter at Granite Grok in spurts lately, and you can always depend upon him to say something absolutely technically correct, but has nothing to do with the post.
Yes.
Actually, that's not entirely correct, because he's the one who said, when we were talking about all the snow, that global warming now is informed by the idea that it causes lots of snowfall. So he contradicted himself from a couple years ago. Anyway, I'm sorry. I did it. Let's go.
Well, what the bill was about was they didn't want John Burt to twist Skip's arm and to vote in a certain way. In order for me to prove that Skip voted a certain way, I want Skip to take a picture. And I'm going to bully him into this. Mm-hmm. And that's where the selfie came out. He didn't want somebody to take a picture. Well, there's already laws against somebody bullying somebody into voting a certain way.
Mm-hmm.
So instead of enforcing those laws, let's skip that and let's make taking a picture a crime.
Yeah, that's pretty much it.
I'm just curious how you could bully me, John.
Wow.
Well, that was the theory. I don't know that either. That they would never answer.
So.
And we even told them on the House floor that this is unconstitutional. I mean, I have a right to take a picture of my ballot. Sadly, there was enough that wanted to drink the Kool-Aid, and they felt we were going to do something good. The government was going to save everybody. And they said, yes, we'll pass this law, and the governor signed it in.
I find it dryly, I note, let's put it that way, I dryly note that while they absolutely say that there's no voter fraud at all, which we know to be true given what Ed Nail brings to us all the time from CNHT and Heritage on a national scale, but that they go out and say there's bullying going on after the fact. And, on either side. So we can support one, but we can't support the other. I'm sorry, but if you supported one, you should be supporting the other as well. But they won't do it for obviously political reasons. And did anybody, as this bill was being debated, talk about that?
Oh, yes. Yes. No, it was a pretty heated debate, especially the repeal. We tried to repeal it last year, and sadly we lost that in the House. I think it was, Representative Rideout was the prime, and I was a co-sponsor with a bunch of others.
You failed to repeal it in a Republican majority House.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. That's just...
And now, when it comes to what Skip just said about voter fraud, it is that the New Hampshire AG's office will not prosecute any voter fraud is really the correct statement.
Yeah, that's true. That's very true. Can we expect that they would not prosecute any ballot selfie law pictures either?
Oh no! The second Representative Rideout put his selfie picture out there, a person, an attorney from the AG's office, spent taxpayers' money, got into a taxpayer car full of taxpayers' gas, drove all the way to Lancaster,
which is way up north.
Oh, yes, and asked Representative Rideout, did you take a picture? And he said, well, yes, I did. Well, why did you do that? Well, because I can. Well, I'm going to put this in the report. And I'm sure he went to a nice lunch, and, then he came home. And this is how they spent their day.
Well, I bet it was a nice drive.
Well, I bet you they enjoyed themselves driving up there, but I'm just thinking, they say they have no time to prosecute real crimes like voter fraud that we can prove. Yet when this happens, somebody takes a picture of their ballot, they're right there ready to fine the individual up to $1,000.
Wow. I mean, this is almost like when they went up to Pork Fest and started to come after some folks and they got chased off. It's like a total waste of time, except it must have been a lovely drive up above the notch.
Yes.
Taxpayer funded, of course.
Of course. Of course.
The best
and
kind.
what's interesting is they don't even pay taxes on that taxpayer gas.
Really?
The state use of motor fuels is exempt from state tax.
Is the state use of alcohol exempt from state tax too?
Well,
then we'd be in real trouble.
Well,
maybe not. But no, so don't forget that they didn't pay tax on that taxpayer-funded gas.
Well, who pays for his lunch? Do we, or does he have to pay for his own lunch?
I imagine it would depend on how important he is.
Well, and also how far away it goes to, and what the distance is. Because I should say that's how it works in civilian life. I know that when I was flying all over the place or driving all over the place, I had a per diem depending on
upon how far it was, how many miles, how many hours, did you have to spend the night?
Yeah.
And I don't think you have to spend the night to go to Lancaster, but maybe they did because they probably are scared of the dark. And,
yeah.
You know,
and there's people with guns at there.
There's people with guns.
I'll bet you that's your travel expense.
I bet you it is.
I'll bet it is
Sure,
a travel
absolutely.
expense.
You don't have
not just a burger at a joint either.
Do they have? They wouldn't have joints. Is there a dispensary up there?
There's supposed to be.
Ah, okay.
That's a
All
different
this
law and a
over-the-counter
different
stuff,
problem,
yeah.
but we'll get to that later.
So, John, that bail money I loaned you.
Well, I know I was very happy with the federal judge. I mean, I'm not a big fan of the federal government, but I think he got this one right, and he got several of them right. The other one was what is it? You can take a picture of a police officer, record audio and video.
Yeah.
That's the other big one. But I guess they have done some good there.
Well, there's always hope, right?
Yes. Yeah.
I would think that after all of the things that have happened in Ware over this.
Where?
And Ware, New Hampshire.
You guys always fall for that.
Hook, line, and sinker, right?
Sorry. Huh?
No, she's not.
It's the part of New Hampshire that turns into a monster at night when the moon comes out.
Sorry, Skip.
No, you're not at all. But and then, Ashley, you see case after case of policemen grabbing for cameras and cell phones, taking video and all of that stuff, and the judges just slap them down. I still find it somewhat unreasonable that police just don't know this now, other than they just have this, like a lot of bureaucrats, not just police, an overinflated view of themselves and their jobs.
Well, you do know we have a bill in the House that made it perfectly clear that civilians, or you and I, or whoever it is, have a right to audio videotape a police officer.
That brings up a question. I just was, as you were talking about this. So, you can videotape a police officer legally from your vehicle.
Yes.
With a recording device.
Yes.
Unless it's a cell phone.
Well, that's what the question is right now. If you get stopped for a traffic stop, can you grab your cell phone? Mm-hmm. Nobody knows the answer to that right now.
I thought it was a no, but in response to what you said, it's any electronic device. They didn't say cell phone; they said electronic device,
which suggests to me, and this is just occurring to me now. So if you see light bulbs going off over my head, that's why. Maybe that's part of why they wanted it in the first place.
Do you think?
Yeah, I do.
It's awfully convenient because the law includes you're not allowed to even to stop at a stoplight or anything like that.
The carpenter ant finally got through the wood.
So.
And all those times heading north on I-89 and some poor schlub is over in the ditch, I can't call 911 and say, I saw someone just slip off the ice, they've gone into the ditch, I'm a good Samaritan, they're at exit such and such mile marker. I can't do that anymore.
I thought there was an exception for that.
There is an exception, I think, for emergency.
But you might get pulled over by the cop who saw you with the phone and missed the guy in the ditch.
Exactly.
Yes.
Priorities,
It was always a bad bill. I mean, everybody who was opposed to it wrote or said or spoke or did whatever at great length to point out what a ridiculous bill it was.
Well, but I'm delighted, though, that I can still put on mascara and eat a sandwich and have a paper map spread out on the dashboard. So thanks for that carve-out, guys.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And I always thought your GPS is, you're in the same, or we're in the same boat. I loved it when I found out what a GPS was in a Hertz rental car, and I went, hot diggity! I don't have to do all of these charts from MapQuest anymore and try to read them in the dead of night on a snowy night at midnight, the lady will just talk to me.
Saved my marriage.
Yeah. And, so here we are going backwards once again. And, what's going to take more of my attention, reading the map or doing the GPS?
Well, it's the mascara that's the tricky part.
While you're smoking. And holding a coffee.
You guys just...
Ow, my eye!
I got you all beat, because when coming home from Boston coming north, I used to go to work in the financial district every day, and I would have my laptop going, surfing the net as it was, looking up, try to make my work productive. On the cell phone, my pages going off, and I'm trying to conduct a contract to buy more equipment. And I cannot tell you how many times the lady that I dealt with at PC Connection would go screaming, "Are you okay? You okay?" When I said, crap. Scared her half to death.
Okay, John, stay on the line. We're going to take a quick break and listen to some little adsy thingsies, and we'll be right back. Stay tuned.
Mascara. Jeez.
This is a coalition of New Hampshire taxpayers. We're located at 8 North Main in Concord, New Hampshire. This is a repository for all things conservative and municipal. So if you have a problem in your town, your school, your budget committee, the right to know law, and now, at the top of our list is voter fraud. You have a tip for us, some information for us, you want to join or help us out, cnht.org.
Hi, this is Rich Gerard, host of Gerard at Large in the Morning, the Manchester area's only locally owned, locally operated, focused, and interested riveting radio show, heard live every Monday through Friday from 6 to 9 on 90.7 FM WLMW New Hampshire Family Radio, and available 24/7 live or archived at GerardAtLarge.com. Be sure to tune in.
GrokTALK comes to you live almost every Saturday morning from 9 to 11 a.m. Eastern Time on New Hampshire's leading conservative blog site, GraniteGrok.com. You can also listen live at Spreaker.com. If you missed a live show, catch up with the podcast at GraniteGrok.com, Spreaker.com, on Stitcher Radio, at iTunes, TuneIn, or iHeartRadio, and now on The Rock, New Hampshire's Christian radio station, The Rock, NHCR.com. GrokTALK is a mobile-ready broadcast, so you can listen anywhere, anytime on your PC, laptop, tablet, or smartphone.
GrokTALK.
We really do have a lot of fun on the break.
We do.
I'm Steve McDonald here with Skip Murphy and Susan Olson. Paul Best from the New Hampshire Liberty Alliance is with us, and we have Representative John Burt.
From the John Burt Society.
Who is, are you still in the running for the best hot dogs in New Hampshire?
Well, I got an honorable mention on WMUR over that.
You did? For those who don't know, every year John Burt's Hot Dog Day at the State House. And it's a rousing, successful event that happens every year.
How many hot dogs do you serve?
Last year was well over 1,100.
That's a lot of dogs.
How many went to Democrats?
Oh, it's a nonpartisan, and I welcome everybody.
Nonpartisan wieners.
But you can always tell that they're the ones with their hands out, right?
No, we give a lot of... I was very surprised. They said there was well over 700 people attended last year. It was the largest... it was my fourth Rep. Burt's Hot Dog Day that I hosted, and I was just shocked on how big it got.
I can tell you from years of experience in the restaurant industry, doing scheduling, buying product, managing profit and loss, because food has a shelf life, that in a restaurant situation, when you have years and years of research available to you, you can take the last 4 or 5 years and accurately predict exactly how much you're going to need in labor and materials and so on and so forth, almost every hour of the day. I mean, the world really does work that way, with a few exceptions. Maybe a bus shows up or there's an event nearby. How do you anticipate this, and how many hot dogs did you buy in advance?
Well, we bought a little over 1,200, almost 1,300, expecting that the crowd was going to be larger this year. So we did have enough of that, but we ran out of everything else. Even ketchup and mustard. My wife's coming screaming at me, "John, we have no more ketchup." And I go, I don't know what to do. I mean, it was just overwhelmingly. And one thing that I am really glad that the NH1 News did a really nice story on it. They said not one tax dollar was used, which is true.
And you raised how much money for for Kachiko, right?
Yes, it was for the Kachiko Valley Humane Society, and we raised, I think it was a little over $4,000.
Wow, that's amazing.
Yes.
That's so cool. We used to do a motorcycle ride for Kachiko Valley when I was biker trash, but that was a few years ago.
Yeah, they do a lot of good work over there.
Yes, they do. They do. Great facility.
And what do they do?
Kachiko Valley?
Yeah.
It is an animal rescue society, and they I think, John, correct me if I'm wrong, they take almost any animal. In fact, if I recall correctly, they were getting involved in some of the larger animals like horses and animals that just either their owners couldn't keep them anymore.
Not your average domestic fare.
I
know they have rabbits and everything.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they'll take almost anything.
Yeah, wow.
Yeah.
Democrats?
Yeah, they do a lot of good work, and they're looking to build a new building. They desperately need it.
Oh,
they're
they
in
do?
They're in the old pig building.
Wow.
And where they used to raise the pigs over there, and it's very needed, a new building for them.
Well, it's a very neat thing that you do.
All right, so John, what else is hot on your plate at the moment, legislatively or otherwise?
Well, we're going to try to hopefully talk the governor into stop this veto issue that she's got with us and pass a budget that, to be honest, it grows government $300 million, so that's why I was against it. But there's no extra tax impact on the taxpayer. So it's a good budget. It just grows the government a little bit more than I would prefer.
And this is the
but
one
overall, it is, she vetoed it, and there's, a couple $1 million more for the heroin issue that we have. There's money for the veterans home that she vetoed that is not going to get there. There's a lot of good in there that she is doing harm to by keeping the veto going.
Hey, John, I got a question, because I think Steve hit it on the head, or you hit it. It grows it more than what you would like. When I was on my town's budget committee, I always said that government rise in spending should never outpace that of the average individual's rise in income. And yet we see that happening over more and more. And I dryly note that the difference between Hassan's budget and what's come out so far isn't all that large percentage-wise. But even at a 5%, well, how many hundreds of millions of dollars over a $13 billion overall budget?
Yes.
When you include the federal money, it's not that big of a difference. But I keep thinking, Republicans keep saying that they are the party of lesser government, and yet here's a prime example of it is a bigger government. And I get tired of listening to, well, we've got inflation, this, that, and the other. No, it's still bigger than it was last year in absolute dollars. And given the inflation rate of basically zippo, it's still a bigger budget. So how do Republicans as a party actually justify this?
That's my question, is because that's one of the reasons I was going to vote originally no for it. But then when the veto came, I said, well, I guess I got to relook at what my vote's going to be, and that's when I, voted yes for it. There is no taxpayer impact, so that's the plus. But it's the $300 million extra that is going into government.
Well, when you say there's no taxpayer impact, sure there is, because if it was lesser government, I'd actually have more money in my pocket.
Well, that's true.
And the question is how much more of the federal money is coming in, of which I am a federal taxpayer.
Yes.
And I get tired of the double talk at the state level saying, oh, it's federal money. Well, look, you morons. Most of us are paying federal taxes as well. So you really think even the Republicans, you really think we are all that stupid? And do you guys ever talk about this either at the subcommittee level, committee level, or on the House floor? Because it seems
we do talk about the federal impact, and where they spin, which I disagree with. they say if we spend $1, we get 3 of the federal dollars. And I'm going, I don't care. You know,
well, why should they take it from us in the first place?
Yeah, we're a donor state. We're a donor state. We're still not getting that money.
It's money laundering, John. Come on.
That's what it is. Well, one big thing that a lot of people don't understand is Hassan, one of her main veto issues was over the state employees' raises. Now, this is what I'm being told, 65 to 70% of the employees will receive, regardless if she vetoed or didn't veto this bill, they'll receive a 5% cost of living raise. I'm not sure exactly what they call it, but there's a raise in there. 5%. They were after another 4 to 5 for everybody, so that some employees would receive an 8 to 9, 10% raise.
And I look at that unless something is drastically happening either with your career or with your company. Most people are still just barely getting above the inflation rate, which is just about nil, at least officially.
Yeah.
And how does government basically justify giving such a raise to itself?
Them votes don't buy themselves, Skip.
I was trying to ask a leading question that I knew. Don't worry.
It was.
I just and it adds to what I think is the hubris of government that says, and part of the movement of moving government from being the public servant to being the public master. I mean, just look the post I put up last night. Your Colorado on EPA. Steve started the ball rolling a little bit ago with that big mine pollution started by the EPA by a contractor that shall not be named, but already received $381 million from said EPA, and went ahead and did exactly what the local control said not to do, and now they have put literally millions of people at risk for drinking water because of all this toxic gold mine waste that had laid there for 92 years.
I'm sure the fees will be astronomical for the EPA. The EPA will have to lay off a lot of people, probably cut their budget significantly. I think it's going to be a real impact on them, on their business model, don't you think?
No fine.
The positive news,
fine.
I know, that's my joke.
The positive spin on this is that they only spent $380 million, though, to ruin the river.
That's right. And anyway, it's already clearing up. Didn't you see that?
Oh, I posted
Governor
that.
Hoopla, or whatever the hell his name is.
No, it was Gina McCarthy, the head of EPA.
Drinking water.
Oh, he was too.
Was he down at the golf spill doing that? Because I recall that being a big deal about ruining
It's
the
still a
entire
big deal.
ecosystem that nobody's talked about in years.
Of course, it was no big deal. I mean, they
Exactly.
had a camera down there.
Yeah.
No. So the governor's out there drinking the water, and which may have actually been Kool-Aid because it did have a tint to it.
Did it go through a Sawyer mini filter?
It's unclear. As was the water. Sorry. But no, it's a big scam. Big scam.
There's no when you have the government doing things like this, there's very rarely any serious accountability. They're not going to have any cuts at the EPA over this.
They're going to have to hire people.
They're going to They're going to be able to go and say, "Look, we need more money for more oversight and more safety and more." You get rewarded for failure when with these big agencies instead of a private company. They would be having serious consequences that they would have to.
And, Paul, I think that is the biggest anger that comes up. Because once again, Donald Trump gave a speech out in Hampton Beach, and the most esteemed wife and the youngest actually wanted to watch him because they really hadn't. And frankly, I think he picked up at least one more supporter in my household because of the way that he talks. But I think, not that I'm a Trump supporter by any means, but I understand the angst of Republicans or near Republicans saying, we put you guys in power, you've done nothing to stop anything. And I think you're seeing that outrage once again being fired by what's happened out in Colorado with the EPA, where they've done deliberate harm. All they've said is, oops, nothing's going to happen to it. And they have seen, the public has seen in the past, exactly right, Paul, what... Is that my signal to shut up?
No. Oh. No, that's your clown car music for the EPA.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
That nothing is going to happen. And people keep getting angry at that because who's supposed to be in charge, government or us? And they believe us. And they don't believe that the Republicans are fighting for them. Your thoughts?
You know what's really funny was, not to change the subject, but when you mentioned Hampton, I posted about the 4, ladies that went topless on the beach.
Oh, yeah, they're coming to Laconia next.
I received over 300 comments on that post. I was like, oh, my God. And you know what the funny part is? The real funny part is, if Senator Stiles and Representative Rice, if they just ignored it, it would probably never happen again. But now they've made such a big deal, they're going to have 100 women showing up now topless.
Well, as we kind of talked about during the pre-show about spandex and, not wearing spandex.
I got to cut you off because we got to go.
Oh, dang.
John, thank you so much.
All right. I really appreciate you having me on.
All right. Coming up next, John Judis. Stay tuned. We'll be right back.
It's the Coalition of New Hampshire Taxpayers. We're located at 8 North Main in Concord, New Hampshire. This is a repository for all things conservative and municipal. So if you have a problem in your town, your school, your budget committee, the right to know law, and now, at the top of our list is voter fraud. You have a tip for us, some information for us, you want to join or help us out, cnht.org.
Hi, this is Rich Gerard, host of Gerard at Large in the Morning, the Manchester area's only locally owned, locally operated, focused, and interested riveting radio show, heard live every Monday through Friday from 6 to 9 on 90.7 FM WLMW, New Hampshire Family Radio, and available 24/7 live or archived at GerardAtLarge.com. Be sure to tune in.
Rock Talk.
3, 2, 1.
We'd like to welcome you to another edition of GrokTALK, brought to you by New Hampshire's leading conservative blog site, GraniteGrok.com. We are your feared extremist, right-wing, hard-charging, gun-toting, opinionated, outspoken, rabble-rousing, letter-writing, radio microphone stomping conservatives and rational libertarians. So get ready for more news and opinion you could only get from GraniteGrok.com.
Rock Talk.
Welcome back to another segment of Grok Talk. Thanks again to all our guests today. Paul Best, who's still with us, Darlene Pawlik, John Burt, whom we just talked to, New Hampshire State Rep. Our apologies from Haggie Masson, who was unable to join us today. And, of course, my name is Steve McDonald. I am here with Skip Murphy and Susan Olson. And we are going to bring our next guest on the program, a senior writer for National Journal, former senior editor at The New Republic, and contributing editor to the American Prospect. I would like to welcome John Judis. John, welcome to the show.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Hey, great to have you on. So, you've written a bunch of books. You've I tried to go through everything that you've done, and there's a ton of stuff out there. But today we want to talk about something recent, about a possible Republican resurgence and the kind of the demographic scheme behind that.
Sure. I wrote a book, The Emerging Democratic Majority, with my friend Rui Teixeira. We wrote it, and it came out in 2002. And that we had our own demographic analysis, which pretty much fit the Obama coalition that he won with in 2008. Minorities, women, professionals. That was a group that people really hadn't understood before, especially people with advanced degrees, and that was a lot of the Obama coalition. Add maybe the young people. What I've seen in the last 6 years or so is a shift of some of those of some of the key constituencies into the Republican Party. One of them is a group that's all really started moving to the Republicans after 1968 or so. It's a long time, but just has continued to do so, and that's white working class voters, white voters who don't have 4-year college degrees, who work for wages, not necessarily for salary. That group has been moving. And now, 70% or so the Republicans have started to get, and this particularly in 2010 and 2014. The other group that Obama won in 2008, and that the Democrats won in congressional elections in 2006 and 2008, are college graduates. We're not talking here about post-grads, but college graduates. People who often work in the office economy, second level, third level managers, things like that. That group has been moving into the Republicans, and they were a key factor in for instance, in the Republican Senate race. The Republican won the Senate race and defeated the incumbent in Colorado in 2014. So you see movement there. The final group is senior citizens, and that's a group of people who used to be Democrats because of Social Security. And in the last 10, 15 years have become a very solid Republican constituency. And I think in the last 4 years or so, starting in 2010, the key factor was Obamacare, which was financed partly by cutting the growth of Medicare. As a Democrat, a liberal myself, I think that was just a tragic error. I mean, just a phenomenal political mistake. And it allowed the Republicans to go out and say, "Well, we're the party that could save Medicare." And if you go to a doctor's office now, as I do every year for a checkup, you'll see, for instance, a chart on the wall of things that Medicare now doesn't cover, and it's very scary. So I think that those, if you add up those groups, college-educated voters, white working class, and senior citizens, you have the basis for a pretty solid Republican majority in off-year elections in 2010, 2014, 2018. I think it's much closer in 2016, where the minority vote's going to be much higher, where young people will come out, and that'll really depend upon who the candidates are. So I'm not making any predictions about 2016. I'm just going to say that it's by no means certain for either party.
This is Skip, and I want to say that you introduced yourself as being both a Democrat and a liberal, and you've come into pretty much a very conservative Tea Party lair. Thank you for coming on.
It's my pleasure.
This should be a good discussion, which we're always all about. I would actually like to ask you about a couple of other demographic shifts that might be just starting out. And let me ask you about one in particular that's very interesting, and that's the Jewish vote. Given the animus that the Obama administration has shown publicly to the state of Israel, all nice words to the contrary, because we generally don't like to listen to the words that are said. We watch the actions that are done. There seems to be grave concern among a lot of the Jewish vote that there may be a swing to the Republicans, where they've historically voted very much Democrat. And I see this, the epitome of this is Schumer and, who are some of the other folks that are Jewish in the U.S. Senate and Congress saying, no, they're not going to support the Iran deal.
Schumer's the main one. Senator Cardin is a possibility.
Yep, but there were a couple others that have now announced that they're going to be against the deal. But do you get the sense that may be a demographic that may be shiftable because of this current administration, or just because, or not?
This is a good question for me. My last book was about Truman, American Jews, and the origin of the Arab-Israeli conflict, so I think about this a lot. I think the main shift is going to be among rich Jews, the people who contribute to AIPAC and organizations like that. And you really have seen a shift in the last few years in terms of fundraising. And it's not insignificant, obviously. And, the poster child for that is Sheldon Adelson, but there's a lot of other people. Bernard Marcus, the Home Depot guy. There's a lot of people besides him that have become very faithful and dependable Republican money guys who weren't before. Among the Jewish rank and file, so to speak, what's really happening is a division over Israel, and it's not accurate, really, to say that Obama has been critical of Israel. He's been critical of the Netanyahu government. And I think that that's what you see a lot among rank-and-file Jews now is more support for a group like J Street that supports the Iran deal and less support for a group like AIPAC. So it's hard for me to say. I wouldn't suspect there would be a big drop-off in just rank-and-file Jewish support for Democrats, particularly if it's somebody like Hillary Clinton. The biggest drop was George H.W. Bush in 1992, but I don't think that when the Democrats got 85%. So I don't necessarily see that happen. But the money thing is very significant. That's not something trivial.
John, as far as the shift that you basically calculated in the white working class labor type movement towards Republicans, what do you think is driving that specifically?
Well, look, in the beginning, let's just talk about the white working class. These are all kind of funny census categories, so you have to take that in mind. Somebody's going to always come up with exceptions, but you got a broad and general idea what I'm talking about. The first thing that drove it, particularly in the South, was civil rights. No question about that. And you saw in a lot of southern states the vote for George Wallace, the segregationist, who ran as an independent and then as a Democrat in presidential elections, moving into the Republican Party over 20 years or so. A lot of the voters went into Democratic, then independent, then Republican. So that's not an insignificant cause. Second reason is to some extent social issues, and again that's particularly in the South. Democrats' identification with the feminist revolution, sexual liberation, all that stuff. You can fill in the blanks there. The third thing is that Democrats have been committed over the last 40 or 50 years, maybe beginning in the 60s and early 70s, to social programs, welfare programs, what have you, that have the tendency to make the middle class pay for problems of the poor. The classic example, of course, is busing, right, where you have kids from middle-class neighborhoods whose schools are okay suddenly become questionable. They get bused into schools that they're very worried about, whereas upper-class people in the suburbs and stuff do fine. They're just not affected at all. Obamacare, the Affordable Care Act, and believe me, I support universal health insurance and all that stuff, but it had the effect, again, of making the middle class with higher premiums pay for problems that the uninsured were having. And, that's the kind of stuff, if you want to drive people out of the party, do programs like that. So I think that's been another factor in moving the white working class, and in that case, too, college-educated voters, in becoming either independents or Republicans.
No, I'm fascinated. This is Susan here. I'm one of those old white ladies who has watched this over the last 40 or 50 years. So what you're saying, if I understand you correctly, is that the shift is a function of people getting tired of theft by government to buy votes. Yes?
Well, that happens to all the parties do that. That's not that more feeds the kind of independent sentiment, the Trump, Perot, Buchanan thing. That's not something. The Republicans are just as good at that, but they reward different people. You know what I mean? It's not that's not something that's peculiar to Democrats. I'd make it more specific. The things that I was saying: civil rights, feminism, counterculture, and the liberal programs that benefit primarily poor people and get middle-class people to pay for them. Those would be the things I would cite in particularly. Not corruption. Both parties are specialized in that.
All right, John, hang on. We're going to take a quick break, and we'll be right back. Stay tuned. Got to turn off all these microphones.
This is the Coalition of New Hampshire Taxpayers. We're located at 8 North Main in Concord, New Hampshire. This is the repository for all things conservative and municipal. So if you have a problem in your town, your school, your budget committee, the right to know law, and now, at the top of our list is voter fraud. You have a tip for us, some information for us, you want to join or help us out, cnht.org.
Hi, this is Rich Gerard, host of Gerard at Large in the Morning, the Manchester area's only locally owned, locally operated, focused, and interested riveting radio show, heard live every Monday through Friday from 6 to 9 on 90.7 FM WLMW New Hampshire Family Radio, and available 24/7 live or archived at GerardAtLarge.com. Be sure to tune in.
This is GrokTALK, brought to you by the Coalition of New Hampshire Taxpayers, who you just heard, Chairman Ed Nail. My name is Steve McDonald. I'm here with Skip Murphy, Susan Olson, and Paul Best from the New Hampshire Liberty Alliance. We are talking to senior writer from National Journal, John Judis, about demographic shifts in voting habits and things like that. John, some of the things that I was looking for when in preparation for this was to find other opinions about your work, particularly this topic. And one of them was Sean Trent at Real Clear Politics, who comes out with this mathematical feast of electoral number crunching, stimulated by your recent article on the subject of a Republican shift. And he says, we should remember that the Democrat coalition today will not be the Democrat coalition of 10 years from now, so any Republican advantage may well prove fleeting, but if we limit ourselves to the near future, current structural forces probably make the advantage real. Have you, what kind of response, pushback have you gotten in the media or from other people in demographics with regard to your current assessment?
Well, I think the main response from that I got from some of my Democratic friends was negative. I mean, and I got, Karl Rove loved the article, so it's it's what you would expect. But I'm not. Again, when you do these kind of things, you can never be sure. The other factor that I didn't mention and that affects the future is where the parties go politically. The Republicans, in my opinion, again, have to move somewhat to the center. They can't stay on the far right and expect to win. If they do that, if they take off the rough edges, especially on social issues and issues that have won maybe the solid South but have hurt them elsewhere, I think they have a really good chance, and that's somewhat what you saw in the 2014 election. In my state, the governor, Larry Hogan, the guy who ran as for governor, is a Republican, and Maryland's a very Democratic state. He won. The guy who was running against him tried to make the whole election around Hogan's support for opposition to abortion, and Hogan wouldn't buy it. He didn't make a big issue of it. He said he wouldn't change the law. So again, I think that if the Republicans are smart about this, if they move more to the center on some issues, then they have a really good chance of turning that advantage, what I just called an advantage, into a majority. If they don't, if they nominate somebody who, Romney had these problems in 2012. He was a candidate of the 47% or the rich people. Then they're going to get beat. So that's the other factor. That's the contingent factor in all this. Who gets nominated, and whether they can keep their base happy, but still move to the center. And the Democrats have that problem as well as the Republicans.
Well, John, you probably hit on one of the things on which we're going to highly disagree. We're all kind of looking at each other with wide eyes as you're saying this. Basically, I
figured. I'm not surprised.
Yeah, and I have been a state committee member here in New Hampshire. Several of us others have been as well. And yet, I got news for you. We're sort of the part of the base that hates the Republicans more than we do the Democrats at this point. And we just kind of all looked at each other when you said, well, the only way the Republicans win is to become more like the Democrats. Now, the side note here is I noticed that certainly Debbie Wasserman Schultz has really stuck her foot into it by not being able to articulate any difference between the Democrat and the Socialist. And frankly, when I look at the Democrat agenda, the Socialists and the Communists, I can't see much of a difference either. So I can understand why she's kind of tongue-tied. But I look at that and go, I keep hearing the same thing you said. Smooth it over on the social issues, and yet that's pretty much how the Democrats run, is strictly on social issues. And you're trying to tell us that Republicans should take themselves totally off that field of battle to be able to win? I don't think so. Andrew Breitbart famously said, politics is downstream from culture. And frankly, we all think that a large part of the high points of culture, the ramparts, are owned by the liberals in the media, except for Fox and Talk News, but certainly the newspapers, the magazines, the movies, TVs, and the whole bit. So I guess I'm sitting here going, really? Do you really believe Republicans should become more like Democrats to start winning more?
Okay, well that's fun. I'll try to respond to you. I am not saying that on all issues Republicans should become like Democrats or vice versa. I think that there's a certain core Republican appeal, and it's to American skepticism about the state, about government, taxes, regulation, and things like that, that allows them to cut into democratic and independent margins. It's very important to winning elections. I think that there are other kinds of issues like abortion, for instance, that are popular in some states but that will lose votes in others, and that if they're made a major part of a national election, will probably on the margin benefit Democrats rather than Republicans. So that's this kind of distinction I'm trying to make. In the last few elections, let's say Obama in 2008, I think the key issues there were Iraq War on the one hand and the economy, and the feeling that Obama was would be better able to handle the economy than the financial crash than McCain. And when he really made his push was in September when Lehman Brothers went under, and McCain had this very feeble response to it. And I think that's where the election broke. So Obama could carry along all his social constituencies, but that was the deciding issue. So what I'm saying about moving to the center for Republicans doesn't mean giving up on the skepticism about the state. Though, again, if you want to get rid of Social Security, you're going to lose nationally. Or if you know what I mean. If again on those, there's extremes. But skepticism, wariness. Too much taxes, too much spending, that's fine. Those are issues that appeal to a great many Americans.
What you mentioned the need or what you believe would be a more winning strategy for Republicans in moving towards the center. If you could give me 3 bullet points that would define what is that center, because I don't have any idea what it is.
I was trying to do that.
Well, I'm a girl and I'm not very smart, and I used to be blonde, so bear with me.
Okay, you want to? I'll try to do this. It's very hard, and I don't want to advise Republicans because I don't want them to win. I'll just give you a few again, and I'm going to be repeating what I said. Skepticism about government spending and taxes, but not. But again, the extreme position is doing away with the IRS or the Federal Reserve and things like that. That's out of the question. Skepticism. Secondly, more mushy on social issues. You could be against abortion, but not amendments, not constitutional amendments that if a woman is raped stuff. She can't get an abortion. So there's a center on all those issues, and in general emphasizing economics, not social stuff. Keeping the base, but that being the main emphasis. So foreign policy, I don't know if that's going to be a big issue. It hasn't been a big issue it wasn't in 2012. And maybe this time, my suspicion is that some of the Republicans in the primary are making a big deal about foreign policy, so they don't have to talk about social issues. So that's the suspicion on my part.
So, would you say, I've read some articles about maybe how there's actually a political shift, especially among young people, towards being, we often talk about politics in terms of this right-left spectrum and moving towards the center. And I think that's part of the confusion because there's more facets to politics than sort of a single line. I've read quite a bit about a movement among young people to be more, fiscally opposed to government spending, but maybe less hard line on certain social issues. Is that what you're referring to? That maybe
absolutely, and that's I've seen the same things, and again, it's not moving towards a kind of libertarian Cato position, but it's skepticism about government. Not if you come out with a big program, a $1 trillion program for saving the cities through spending, that's not going to be popular with young people. To give you an example.
I'll tell you, John, I'm sitting here, and I think the thought that's going through our heads, and probably yours as well, is that we seem to be orthogonal in our discussions because, like I said, the wide-eyed, he just said what? And I'm quite sure that you've got the same feeling at your end. If you're going to be in New Hampshire for any amount of time, I would love to be able to sit down and interview you or have you here in a special edition of GrokTALK here in Concord, because I really think an in-studio discussion of this, a frank, good one, we tend to be the wild, wild west on Granite Rock itself, but as you can tell, we're trying to be more reasonable as we talk with our guests. And I'm looking at this, and the only two words that go through my mind are total disconnect. As we talk about the politics of this, and I'm not even sure that there's much common ground, which is another facet to the whole politics, where it seems like we are an extremely divided nation because there doesn't seem to be much of a middle left. We don't like the squishes, as we call them, and all of the blue dog Democrats have been wiped out, and the two parties have gone to the polls. And I think Paul was right. There is the Democrat versus Republican, the right versus the left. But then there's always that other axis, liberty versus statism. And then I'd add another one, being an evangelical Christian, morally right and wrong. And all of those axes are just whirling around in space right now because we are in such a time of flux. I guess your opinion on that, on those additional axes that Paul started to talk about, the total disconnect, should we be a divided nation, and whether or not you'd actually be able to come in studio sometime to have a really more robust discussion.
I'm in New Hampshire through Thursday about 4 o'clock.
Okay.
So, we could work something out. But you have to talk to me. I'm more curious about what you have to say than I'm eager to say what I have to say. Put it that way. I'm on a trip here. Well, I'm now on a vacation, but I'm looking at what voters are thinking. I'm not on a speaking tour. So I'm happy to come in.
I know that we had talked about you wanting to talk to Republicans about the Republican Party in the state, and that's part of.
Who contacted me, who I'm going to see on Monday.
Fran. Yeah, okay. Fran will give you a great discussion about the 603 Alliance, which really is based in a great part on this Republican divide, and that'll be a great conversation for you to have with her. She's been doing a lot of media for us lately. We are running out of time. We got about a minute left. Could you provide some contact information for our listeners if they want to reach you or to get a hold of your stuff, things like that?
Well, you can just Google my name. It's Judis is my last name. My ancestors thought they would make Judis more American by changing it to Judis, which was one of the great fatal error and plagued
Spelling is nice, though.
Yeah, I know. So you just can my name and the National Journal or New Republic, and the articles will come up that way.
Oh, great. Well, thank you so much for taking some time to talk to us. What are you doing?
Tuesday or Wednesday night, would you be available to meet with us?
Tuesday night.
Okay. Can you email Skip at granitegrok.com, and we'll try to set that up. I have a meeting.
You have my email.
Oh, I do. I'll just email you again.
You send me the email, and I'll reply to you.
All right, great. Well, thanks so much for being on the show. And,
okay, it was fun.
All right, we'll talk to you later. Bye-bye. All right, John Judis, as we end the program. See, we got a Democrat to come on the show who wasn't like a libertarian, because we've had Democrats who are libertarians on the show.
I would like to have more Democrats on to have this kind of discussion.
Well, we do ask. I
know, very few come
other than
on.
Ed Nail, who we've had on all the time. Anyway, we got to go. It's Grok Talk. Thanks for tuning in. We'll be back next week with more guests and more Grok Talk.
Yeah, baby!
When asked whether she still supports Obamacare, Senator Jeanne Shaheen said,
"Yes, I do continue to support the law. We're beginning to see some positive results."
How can Senator Shaheen say we're seeing positive results when 22,000 of our neighbors have already lost their health insurance? What's worse, the Boston Globe reports the state's only health insurance provider radically reduced the number of hospitals in their network, forcing some people to drive over an hour for lab work, even when there's a hospital within a few miles of their home. When pressed about lack of access, Shaheen said,
"There are some hospitals that are not covered, unfortunately, and I certainly hope that's going to change."
Jeanne Shaheen promised us we could keep our doctors and our healthcare coverage. Now she hopes we can get to a local hospital? Call Senator Shaheen at 603-647-7500. Tell her we need more than hope. We need leadership. Paid for by Citizens for a Strong New Hampshire.
Senator Jeanne Shaheen said, "If you like your current health plan, you can keep it." That's not true, Senator. 22,000 New Hampshire citizens have been kicked off their insurance plans. Hospitals in Rochester, Concord, and Portsmouth, they aren't allowed to provide care under the exchange. Senator, you were wrong in your comments. You should apologize for your misleading remarks. I'm calling Senator Shaheen at 750-3004 and telling her I want my doctor back. You should too.
Paid for by SaberPac.org, not authorized by any candidate or candidate committee.
All of the music on this program comes to us through Creative Commons licensing from Kevin MacLeod at Incompetech.com. The opinions expressed on this program are those of the speakers, not necessarily those of CNHT, GraniteGrok.com, or anyone else for that matter.